Welcome back to the Top Notch Documentaries YouTube channel. Khoi Dang Vu was a 25-year-old man who went missing from his home in Vancouver, Washington on April 7, 2007 under suspicious circumstances. Khoi is of Vietnamese descent and suffers from a mental disability. Since birth, Khoi has been unable to speak and is deaf. As a result of these problems, he functions at the level of a 10-year-old child. Evidently, Khoi is very limited when it comes to communication. However, he can communicate through sign language. Khoi Dang Vu would be classified as a vulnerable adult. When he suddenly went missing from his family home in 2007, everyone was shocked and concerned for his safety. Lacking the ability to live independently, his family knew that he could be in danger. When his case went public, many didn't believe that he would have left on his own accord, and police believe that foul play is to blame for his sudden disappearance. Here is the timeline of his case. Khoi was last seen alive around 1 AM on April 7th of 2007. He'd been watching TV with his mum and eventually got tired. Using sign language to say goodnight to his mum, he made his way to his bedroom. By all accounts, Khoi wasn't acting strange or out of the ordinary, like some people who abruptly go missing. Rather, Khoi was visibly excited because the next day it was his mum's birthday. The family would be travelling north up to Seattle to celebrate this. Plus, Khoi was even more excited as he was looking forward to seeing his brother, who resided in Seattle. It was going to be a great day. Having seen Khoi enter his bedroom, his family more than likely were familiar with his routine and probably went to sleep not long after themselves. It was the early morning hours now and everything was quiet. Somehow nobody heard what happened next. The exact time isn't known, but sometime between 1 and 8 AM, Khoi put on a new outfit before leaving the house. Khoi's sister and brother-in-law entered his room around 8 AM and were left confused. Khoi wasn't in his bed, and there was no movement elsewhere in the house. Upon further inspection, it appeared like Khoi's bed hadn't been slept in, and his bike and jacket, both of which he treasured, were still in the house. Just where was Khoi? Family in a state of panic now. Everyone was searching for the 25-year-old. Since Khoi only ever went out for a couple hours at most and had never walked out at night before this, the alarm was raised to local police. Police arrived and could find no sign of forced entry to the residence. It had been raining and police surmised that Khoi must have left the house on foot. But why would he leave the comfort of his house in the early morning hours to be outside in the darkness and rain? Nothing was making sense. 3 days following his disappearance on April 10th and Khoi was still missing. Police upped their interest in the case and began checking out local bodies of water in which Khoi may have fallen into. They also started looking through local sex offender persons of interest, and they speculated that Khoi could have been going to meet with someone with whom he'd met either in person or online. Police became even more convinced of a stranger meet-up when they had a tip that a woman had seen Khoi playing basketball at a local elementary school in the afternoon of April 6th. Khoi was 5'5" and weighed 105 pounds. Given this tip along with his characteristics, you could easily mistake him for a child. Police felt as though he could have been spotted on the court by a predator who sensed that he was a vulnerable person and took advantage of him. Khoi was an outgoing person and was known to approach most people. With these details, the widely speculated theory was that Khoi was abducted. Unfortunately, law enforcement would end up discrediting the tip about Khoi being at the elementary school on the afternoon before his disappearance. It was said that the person who was spotted was someone who resembled Khoi. Following the tip being discounted, all further leads seemed to go nowhere. Police publicly stated that it was super unlikely that Khoi was a victim of online sexual predation and that there were no traces of foul play. Still, despite making this bold statement, they would carry on making inquiries into local sex offenders and checked out surveillance video from neighbourhood businesses. Given the amount of time that police and Khoi's family spent actively searching for him, and this was done through canvassing the neighbourhood and posting missing persons flyers, Khoi Dang Vu didn't resurface. It is bizarre how a person who spends most of their time in such a small radius can go missing without a trace. By this point in the investigation, the FBI had gotten involved, and police dogs had been employed to search for Khoi. This led nowhere. On April 27th, the Khoi Dang Vu case would take a turn for the worst when it was revealed that it had become a criminal investigation. A person of interest was mentioned, although their name hasn't been publicly put out there. The FBI and local law enforcement interviewed this person, but the person wasn't charged with anything related to this case. Months would pass, and Khoi's family continued to worry about his fate and whereabouts. Despite reward money being offered, this case went cold and remains unsolved to this very day. Now, this case is a tricky one, and I assume that law enforcement knows more than they're letting on. I say this because they consider this case to be a homicide. Law enforcement feel confident that Khoi was murdered, and his body was discarded in a dumpster, which ultimately made its way to a landfill site in the state of Oregon. It sounds very particular, and just how they came to this conclusion remains a mystery at this time. I'll now get into some of the theories about this case. For starters, was Khoi Dang Vu a victim of a predator? If Khoi Dang Vu was a victim of a local sex offender, then I'm guessing that he would have come into contact with that individual during a face-to-face encounter. The police seized computers and other technology that belonged to Khoi, which seems to be the protocol in cases like this. Given Khoi's lack of communication, it makes it difficult for me to believe that he was groomed online, or willingly left his home to meet up with a stranger on the internet. I don't buy this theory, but online grooming is a real phenomenon, and even though I consider it a stretch, I wouldn't rule it out when it comes to this case. The next theory is short, and it's one that I don't buy: an accidental death theory. Given the very specific dumpster and landfill detail, not to mention law enforcement's homicide belief, this doesn't make much sense. Why would Khoi leave his home when it was raining and dark to go out and sit in a dumpster? Surely someone would have heard him inside it when it was being carted away to be emptied. Third theory is that Khoi never made it out of his house. Some people have pointed the finger toward his family. Could they have been responsible for his disappearance? This is tricky to confirm. I haven't come across any solid reason as to why they'd harm Khoi, and given his mother's birthday taking place the next day, it seems pretty unlikely that they'd want him gone. The final theory that I'll be mentioning pertains to Israel Keys. Khoi's name was on his computer. I'm not sure whether Khoi was of great interest to Israel or why he looked him up, but this was likely concerning to the FBI. Once again, like many missing persons cases that Keys could be involved in, he has no definitive location at the time of Khoi's disappearance. In March, he had begun his relocation up to Alaska, and whilst the case took a turn for the worst when it shifted from a missing persons case to a criminal investigation, Israel was in Southern California and Mexico. Could Khoi Dang Vu have been an Israel Keys victim? There's little evidence that says that he could be, and that's a big problem. Khoi Dang Vu vanished from an area that Israel Keys had driven by numerous times. Despite it being a busy urban area, I'm guessing that he would have been comfortable travelling in and out of that environment. He'd flown out of Portland Airport in the past, which is just across the state line. He'd picked up ATVs in Ridgefield, Washington, just north of Vancouver along Interstate 5. And Israel had rented a hotel in Gresham, Oregon in the past. I wouldn't put it past him being involved, although with so little evidence being public, it's tough to put anyone in the frame without a confession. Khoi Dang Vu would now be in his 40s. Cases like this remind us about how life can be altered in a split second. They remind us just how strange life can be, how a person can simply vanish into thin air. Hopefully, Khoi Dang Vu's family can get some answers in the not so distant future, and I remain optimistic that someone will one day be put forward as being guilty with the case. This has been the missing persons case of Khoi Dang Vu. As always, thank you for watching.